It's Thursday. We are halfway through April, so I figured what better time to take a look at my favourite and least favourite books from the last quarter. Hey everyone, it's Ray. Welcome to my little bookish corner of the world. And today I'm going to be talking about, as I mentioned, my favourite and least favourite, or best and worst reads of January through March. I know I've talked about the books I've read in those months, but I'm going to actually now look at the books I enjoyed the most and didn't. So which ones are going to be unhauled at some point in the very near future. I'm going to try and make it really balanced. In fact, I've actually got more favourites than not, which is a great place to be. And I think I'm going to start with a couple of the worst or my lower rated books. And it's not that they're bad, it's just that I personally didn't like them. So first on the list is A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. I was promised, in fact, it does promise, an intoxicating brew of secrets, vampires, and romance. You kind of get the vampires, you sort of get the romance. I suppose there are some secrets involved, but I was also promised Six of Crows meets Peaky Blinders, and unfortunately, this did not deliver. This is a proof. I do have a Fairy Loot copy, which is on a shelf for unhauling at a later date. So yeah, this unfortunately just didn't hit the mark with me. I'd love to hear if you were somebody who really enjoyed it, because I know that there are going to be people out there who are thinking, are you nuts? This was amazing. It just didn't float my boat. The next book on my list is actually surprised me because I do enjoy Olivia Dade's and have enjoyed Olivia Dade's previous books, and that is At First Spite. I rated this a 2.5 out of 5, so it wasn't all bad. And there were certain depictions of things like depression which were very well done. However, the love story just didn't quite cut it for me. I wanted to enjoy it. I'd been looking forward to it for quite a while and ordered it as soon as it became available on Amazon. I have a little bit of an issue with pre-ordering on Amazon, so I tend to mostly pre-order books from Waterstones, but I ordered this on Amazon because it became available and read it in just a few hours. However, it just wasn't what I wanted, and it certainly wasn't as good as spoiler alert, or All the Feels, both of which I think were fantastic. I'm now going to turn to a book that I enjoyed because, yeah, there are a few of the less favoured books left on the list. And the first one on that actually nice size pile is Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. This is the sequel to God Killer, which came out last in 2023, and that was a 5-star read for me. And I'm always really anxious when it comes to a sequel. I tend to find quite often that books suffer from the same thing as a lot of films do, sequel syndrome, and I was kind of nervous that this would be the same, but it was a continuation of the story that started in God Killer, and it carried on exactly the same way. The characters were still incredibly strong, they were people to admire, and I really enjoyed following their journey. So I cannot wait to re-meet Kissen and Alara in the next book, which will probably hopefully come out next year. I'm waiting for the announcement, as I always do when I find a book I enjoy. So that was the first on my definite really really positive list, and I gave this one 5 stars when I read it back in February. Next one on the list only just made it into last quarter by the skin of its teeth, and that was this nice big chunky Empire of the Vampire by J. Christoph. I actually purchased this copy on Vinted because I wanted a hardback, because I have a thing about if I've got a series, I either have to have the whole thing in paperback, which would have meant waiting ages for Empire of the Damned, or I have to get them both in hardback. And as I was a bit late to the game, a bit late to game, in that I only started getting into J. Christoph's work at the end of last year, thanks to the Aurora Cycle and Illuminate files, I had to find a hardback copy, and I devoured this in a couple of days at the very end of March. In fact, I think I finished it on March the 31st, which was Easter Sunday. So thank goodness for holiday breaks, is all I can say. Next book on my list, I'm going to go back to my not so great, and that was The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. I know I have already talked about this book, so I'm not going to go into the intricacies of why I didn't enjoy it. Needless to say, I expected a lot more from it than I got. It's well written, but I just didn't like the characters, and I found that the story was far too convoluted. So I am going to give the author another try because, as I said, very well written book, just wasn't for me. However, The Invocations is going to be another one that finds its way onto the unhaul pile at some point in the near future. Next book is going to be another of my top reads. I gave this one 4 stars when I read it, I think in February, and that is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. I enjoyed the intricacy of this, the way that it was thought out, and the time merges. It was such a clever concept, and I know that there have been stories about how the author is kind of arrogant. I don't know, I haven't read any of the interviews. I just know that I read this book and really enjoyed it, and I think the cover is quite pretty as well. So that's The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. Next book I enjoyed was another new author, and that was F.T. Lucan's Otherworldly. This is a proof, as I was lucky enough to speak with the author a few weeks before this book came out. It has been released. It came out at the beginning of this month, and it is not what I expected it to be, and I think that's probably why I enjoyed it. It was a melding of environmental lessons in many ways, mythology, magic. The magical system in this book is very well done, and I absolutely loved the characters Ellery and Knox. Fantastically cute love story in many ways, and I am always a bit of a sucker for something that contains anything resembling mythology. The next book is going to be another of my I have got to get rid of this, I am so disappointed, and that was What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. I had been anticipating this incredible The Mummy 1999 because that is how it has been sold. This is a special edition, it's the Fairy Loot version, but that's neither here nor there. I was looking forward to this because they had sold it to me as this is going to be all the romance and the wonder of The Mummy 1999 with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, and it just did not deliver. I read the book in, I think, a couple of days, and I kept on putting it down and not wanting to pick it up again, which for me is a sure sign that I am not invested in the characters or the story. And yeah, it was a disappointment. So this was a 2-star read, and I hate it when I have to rate a book low, but I just couldn't justify giving it a higher score than that because it didn't deserve it in my mind. I want to end on a high, so I'm going to go alternate, and my next book is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, and this was another 4-star read for me. It has been on my shelf for probably 2 years. I bought the first 3 and the novella, and I postponed reading it. People kept on recommending it, especially after I finished the Aurora Cycle by Christoph and Kaufman, and really enjoyed that. And I devoured those 3 very chunky books in 3 successive days. So everybody was saying, oh, read that, read that. So one day when I knew that I was going into the office and I wasn't going out for lunch with a friend, I took it in and I read probably a third of it during my 60-minute lunch break because I couldn't stop reading. And while I don't feel like I actually got the message that was being shared in the book, I'm not quite sure what their mission was, and it didn't feel like there was a fully formed ending to the story. I still enjoyed it a great deal. I loved the characters. I think that they were incredibly cleverly created, especially Rosemary, because I couldn't help but feel pity for her. She was running away from her past, and it wasn't a past that she'd caused the issues with. It was a past that someone else had caused problems, where someone else had caused her problems. So yeah, I enjoyed a small way the long way to a small angry planet, and I'm definitely going to be definitely, oh my god, get the words out, definitely going to be reading the rest of these books when I have finished a few more of my 24 for 24. And if you haven't seen that, I will post the link above. I think that's the right place, might be up there somewhere. Okay, the next book is my last. I did not enjoy this book of the year, and it was actually of the quarter. It was actually one of the first books I read in 2024. I'd been anticipating it for a long time. There had been so much hype, and when you think about the hype that goes on around books like Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, Yellowface, Babel, and all of the ACOTAR series, when you think about that kind of hype, this hype wasn't exactly subtle either, and it was unusual for a spy thriller, and that is Argyle by Ellie Conway, whose identity has now been revealed. And I think I did a short a while ago, actually, right at the very beginning when I first read this. I did a short asking, does anybody know who Ellie Conway is? My theory is that she is a creation, a group of people that have been hired to write it. And it turns out I was kind of right. It was two authors who were hired to write this book by Matthew Vaughn. And I still haven't seen the film. Not sure why, apart from the fact that it has been rated incredibly low by not only critics but the audience. So so I'm kind of postponing it. This book is marketed and as the most incredible spy franchise since Ian Fleming. That is huge misselling. Ian Fleming, yeah, there are issues with him as a person, but he knew how to create anticipation, as did Le Carre and Grisham and a few other, obviously the creator of Robert Ludlum, for example. All of these authors, they know how to create that tension and everything else. And Argyle had huge potential to be something great. And it's just incredibly below average. I don't know why I've still got it. I think it was partially to do these videos and partially because it was an expensive book. Not as expensive as some, but it was quite an expensive book. And I sort of hoped it would be more than it was. I might give it to somebody or pass it on to a charity shop, as I've done a number of other books I didn't enjoy this year. So Argyle just didn't cut it. It was marketed as amazing. All the hype around it helped to sell it, especially when there's this mystery around who wrote it in the first place. Unfortunately, that's where the incredible ends. I mean, the cover's pretty cool. I like the colours and even the way that the film was marketed with the actors dressing in Argyle. It just, unfortunately, it fell flat. And the final book is a positive one. It's another 4-star read from me, so one of my top reads for the last quarter, and that is The Excitements by CJ Ray. This was so much fun. It's about two nonagenarians who fought in their own way in the war. They were two females who had grown up with a relative amount of privilege, and you start to find out their story, their backstory, and their history. as you get to know them through the book. It has two separate timelines. One is running through the Second World War, talking about their past, and the other is in the present day, where they are getting up to various amounts of mischief with their very, very tolerant great nephew. And I enjoyed this so much. It made me cry at certain points because there are very, very poignant moments in it, but it's also hilariously funny at times. The book actually starts with one of the great aunts being bailed out of shop jail because she has stolen a little rather ugly crystal elephant from a high class expensive department store. And that's when you really get to understand the character of these two incredible women. It's marketed on the back as a rip roaring adventure, and they're not wrong. It's such a fun book. So if you like things like that, I definitely recommend it. Well, those are they aren't the only books that I've read in this quarter, but they are the ones I thought I should talk about. Have you read any of these? Did you enjoy them? Do you think I am being a little bit harsh? Let me know in the comments, and please, if you are watching and you've watched this far, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for watching.